Hey there everybody, welcome to Carpos channel again, and I figured I'd better make this video before I totally forget and never end up making it, as I made a Q&A video the other day and I said ask me a question and I'll answer it, and I think the last one I made last year, something happened afterwards and I ended up getting distracted and never made the final video, so I better do this now. I'm pretty stoked. I'm heading out to Papadosio today. We're going to drive down to Eugene for the show tonight. It's a couple hours, but totally worth it. And I didn't want to get totally distracted and never end up making this video because the questions are pretty much that were going to come in have come in. So I'm going to try to answer these as quickly but as effectively as possible because it's going to take a while. So as the beginning, I'm going to start at the very beginning. The first question, I might miss one, my apologies, but this one says, in case I missed the question period, do you do yoga or have you ever, and if so, how long? That's from Crossfire. I've done a little bit of Kundalini yoga back in the day. I found that the poses can be very interesting and useful. They can give you a feeling of almost elation. But no, I didn't do it very long, and I don't do it at all very often. I really don't use yoga, but my idea about yoga is that Western yoga is kind of a joke. The idea of going to classes and doing stretches and poses and yoga pants is really not what yoga was. Yoga is really a way of life, and it encompasses a much wider variety of things than just poses. So I guess it would depend on what type of yoga you're talking about. The next question, sorry this might take here, I'm going down the list. Any kind of food dish that you really enjoy making? That's from Cubs. Not really. I used to enjoy making fettuccine alfredo. You know, I do like cooking, but I'm not a huge foodie, so I'm not too big on particular dishes. Next question is from Thanks for Sharing. It's, can you talk about your hair? Why short? Why long? Why shave? Why stop? I'm curious about your reasons. Simplicity. And really, my hair reflects how I feel inside. The idea about a freak flag flying. You know, when I was younger, I had a mullet when I was like 14. And then I started growing my hair out totally, and when I was 18, 19, I had really long hair, and halfway down to my butt, you know, and I was in my hippie phase, if you will. And then one day it just got annoying and I cut it. As far as growing a beard, I've always had facial hair. Very rarely am shaven. I freaking hate shaving. It's a huge waste of time, so I'd rather have a beard than deal with that. But it's just no particular reason other than that's how I feel, the kind of person I feel like. I don't know. I like long hair, you know, kind of defines some thoughts about myself, how I feel about myself anyway. It's an identification, I guess, in a way. The next one's from James. Have you ever had an experience that could be perceived as being supernatural when you've been straight-headed or even on psychedelics? Yeah, that's a hard one because I don't really think of anything as supernatural. And when I've dissected that term, really supernatural is just unknown natural, or misunderstood, or not understood natural. And a lot of things in the past were considered supernatural until we understood what was really happening. And we had thought a lot of forces caused these diseases and whatnot, and then we started to understand a little bit more. I feel like in the future a lot of what we consider to be supernatural today will be explained as natural processes. But I have had plenty of supernatural type experiences, but they're very difficult to explain. I don't know why my phone is not cooperating here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Can you do some research, neuroplasticity and neurogenesis with psychedelics to heal the brain? I've been healing my brain and plan to make a career out of this groundbreaking stuff, so you ought to get the info out to help anyone that's benefited. That's one I'm going to have to save for another time, because neurogenesis, the idea that your brain can help rebuild itself by using psychedelics, I believe there's a lot of potential there. There is a large body of evidence to suggest that when we shut down parts of our brain and allow communication between other parts, it can maybe not neurogenesis as much as rewiring. And really this comes down to how we interact with our psychedelic experience. Some people just like to take acid and go party. Other people like to go in their minds. It's really important that we really look at, instead of just thinking of it as healing our brain, we take action to consciously make efforts to change ourselves during the experience, because that's where I've gained the most use from it. But I can go further on that later. The next one, what are your thoughts on the bizarre, trippy nature of existing, not being able to know the mystery of life, but at the same time being comfortable with it or used to existing? I have a lot of thoughts on that. A lot of thoughts on the trippy nature of existence, but nothing I can honestly put into words. I could go on a tangent for an hour about that one. The next question, wondering what kind of seeds I should use for cannabis. They say the information is very overwhelming. I agree, it really is overwhelming. This is from Robin. I really don't know. I mean, there's so many different strains to grow. I don't know the northern Vermont area. I don't know the climate there, so I prefer Kush seeds, like somebody mentioned Purple Kush. That's one of my favorites. So I would stick with the Kush or the Indica strains. Those seem to be the ones that, for me, that I enjoy, but it really depends on what you like. But any plant will grow in pretty much any climate. It's just a matter of how well. The next one, what food, this is from Time Now and Then. I'm curious of what food and diet you prefer. Best similar plants for energy like kratom, and how to survive long shifts, except fasting and still have enough energy to live a decent life. That's difficult. I can't pin down anything about particular surviving particular shifts or anything, but when it comes to plants like kratom, some people will mention akuama seeds, and that's the opioid-like pain-killing effects that are similar. But as far as the energy, finding plants to give you energy is difficult. Guarana has long-lasting caffeine, which seems to be, it's a high xanthine. Xanthine is what's, I guess, converted into caffeine, but there's several different types. Seems that it's a longer-lasting caffeine that can give you an energy that's not just rise and fall like coffee does. So guarana might help. As far as what food or diet I prefer, I really don't have one. I eat whatever sounds good. I refuse to put myself in any type of a diet box to say I will or won't eat this. So like when it comes to meat, vegetables, somebody will say, I eat all vegetables and I feel great. Another guy saying, I eat all meat and I feel great. For me, it's about what does my body crave? And your body, it's like when they say when you go backpacking on like a long 2-week or 3-week backpacking trip on the Pacific Crest Trail out here, when people come into town, they'll run into towns on their trip and they'll maybe stop and eat a meal. They say that when you do, all of a sudden you might crave tons of potatoes or like 3 steaks. Your body tends to crave what it knows. Your mind knows more than you know about what you want to eat. The only one we have to fight is sugar, because our body is always craving sugar too. But there's a reason for that. It's because our brain runs on glucose. So it's about eating what your body wants, but not giving into the cravings. So I don't have a particular diet, and it changes constantly. I do eat meat, I do eat vegetables, I eat whatever, but I don't have a huge diversive idea of food, love. I like certain foods. I'm a meat and potatoes kind of guy, put it that way. Okay, so every time I turn my phone, it messes it up. Okay, J-Dog asks, if you committed a crime, would you do everything in your power not to be convicted, or would you be honest and take whatever consequences came? Yeah, I would be honest and take whatever consequences came, and I can say that because I've already done it. I had somebody narc me off when I was like 19 for growing pot. The cops ended up getting together with the cops in the next town, and they came and they raided my house, took everything, took all my plants, and then took me outside and asked me if I would ease the burden on me by ratting out and telling them what's going on around town, because I knew all the people. And I just told him, no, I don't do that. And he even said, I didn't think you would. And I was like, well, why did you ask? And I always remember that. That was the time when I had the opportunity to ease the burden on myself. But no, I wouldn't do anything it takes. I mean, there are certain things I would do to lie about something as long as it hurt nobody else, but as far as, nobody wants to go to jail, nobody wants to get busted, but it would depend on the crime and whether I felt responsible for it. And no, I wouldn't do everything in my power, because that might mean harming somebody else, and I could never do that. Tobacco Row says, Grim Reaper wants to know when a goose clown is. Augusta clown, I think it is. Yeah, but I know that that's a joke because of a prior comment, so I won't go into that one. The Dreamer is Me asks, thoughts on Bitcoin, please. I hate talking about Bitcoin because the Bitcoin lovers will think I'm crazy for saying that it's a bubble that will burst, but that's how I feel. I know Bitcoin is built on algorithms for solving these equations and problems. The question is, how is it backed other than in digital currency? In other words, what happens if everything shuts down? The computers go down. But it's more than that. It's about the fact that Bitcoin jumped way up and then dropped back down. The fact that it's volatile. And anything that's volatile can have issues. And I just prefer to avoid it altogether. But it's more than that. Bitcoin mining is actually one of the most resource and energy intensive things there are. There are towns that have banned Bitcoin mining because companies will move there because the electricity is slightly cheaper. And they will use literally up to half the town's electricity just to mine Bitcoin. So it's hugely damaging to our resources and environment to mine Bitcoin, and what do we get out of it? Nothing, an invisible currency. So I'm very, not anti-Bitcoin, I just have no interest in it, and I think it's damaging to the environment. Oven Levin asks, are psychedelics fake samadhi? And I would answer no. Psychedelics are true samadhi. Just in a perhaps a shorter duration or a manifested samadhi. A lot of people ask, say, if psychedelics are true, like are they enlightenment? Is it a true awakening or an awareness? Or one line of thinking says, well, if you want to attain that, truly, then you get it through meditation. Well, my question is, why would our ancestors bother with meditation if they could just take mushrooms and go into that same trance and then come out of it when they want to? I don't think it's fake at all. Taking a natural substance is to reach any state is just what we do. It's no different from meditating and starving yourself in the dark. You're changing your senses in order to make your brain operate differently, so you can gain insight that you might not be aware that you know. Hope that helps. Next one. How do I order from you? If you're talking about kratom, you go to my website. It's carposbotanicals.com. Ryan asks, besides kratom, can you share any natural plants that will help with pain or energy, or ones you've tested yourself? Yeah, like I said before, actually, and somebody else mentioned akawama seeds, which, like I said, they're not energizing, but maybe if you mixed akawama with guarana or something like that. The thing about energy is, even when I take kratom for energy, sometimes it doesn't work. There has to be that initial energy, that fuel to burn. So you can't just take kratom, let's say, and expect to be energized, but if you eat properly and you keep yourself moving, then it can assist. So nothing really gives me energy anymore. I have the same problem trying to find the motivation and energy to just get up and do something, but once you get going, you get going. That idea that, you're rolling, you get rolling. So that's the hardest part, anyway, for me. Roberta asks, what's your sign? I'm a Sagittarius. I get asked that more often than I would expect. It's funny. The next question, this is from Michelle Milliken. She says, I have lots of questions. Feel free to answer as many as you like. I'm going to try to answer them all, so I'll have to go quick because there's like 12 of them. Number one, if you were given an envelope with the time and date of your death, would you open it? No, absolutely not. No interest in knowing anything about my future. I would never even go to a psychic. I feel like it interferes with our ability to think, if you will, and just the free will of life. Two, what is the hardest lesson you've learned? That there is such a thing as too much thinking. Number three, what is the hardest lesson you've learned? I would say the hardest lesson I've learned was when I realized that there's no point in life where you all of a sudden are an adult and understand things. That you realize that every other adult around you is just fumbling in the dark, just like you are. They're just better at pretending that they know what they're talking about. Number three, what is something awesome you've done that no one was around to see? The only thing I could think of is a 360 double kickflip that I did in front of a hospital while I was waiting for one of my friends to get treated for getting hurt on the job. Sitting out there on my skateboard and messing around in the front. Did a 360 kickflip, the only one I ever landed, and nobody was there to see it. But really, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. What's the best compliment you've ever received? I have no idea. What risks are worth taking? Actually, the best compliment I've ever received would be when somebody says you're a good father. Because that's really my biggest job in life. So, what risks are worth taking? Any risks that fill your heart with joy? 6, what are some small things that make your day better? Looking out at my school bus, hearing my son tell my other son he loves him, or hearing, looking at something my kids made, just realizing that they're, seeing their artistic, nature. Everything. I try to make it everything. If I see a small flower, a bug, walk out and it's sunny, I really try to look at the positive in everything. What is something you think everyone should do at least once in their lifetime? I'd say go to a music festival, or at the very least go camping. But going with that many people at a festival is something that's very, very enlightening, but it's not for everyone, I guess. Number 8, if you had to sum up the human species in 3 words, what would those 3 words be? Oh goodness, should have thought about this ahead of time. Curious, confused, and awesome. Number 9, are you vegan? No, hell no. No way. I could never live as a vegan. I understand the damage of that meat does to the environment when we eat it constantly. But I also understand that it really is the best way to get, for me, to get the nutrients that I need. I go by, like what I said, with my body, how my body feels after I eat something. And so I'm just not interested in being a vegan. Everything eats something. Number 10, if you were put in solitary confinement for a year, what would you do to stay sane? I would just probably meditate. What else do you do? I've been in solitary confinement and it sucks. And it wasn't because I did anything wrong, it's because I was in jail and they didn't have any rooms left. And so that's very common in the prison system, to put people in solitary for even up to a year, even if they didn't do anything, just because there's no space. It's crazy. Let's see, the last one. 11. Does the study of philosophy ever lead to answers or simply more questions? There is no study of philosophy. There is only philosophy. Philosophy by nature is the love of wisdom. When we put philosophy into an academic sense, like taking a class on philosophy, that can teach us about others who have thought, but that doesn't put us any closer to understanding ourselves. So, I mean, it can, but yes, it leads to more questions. Always more questions. And if it doesn't, it means that you've settled. 12. Is it better to be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond? Guess it depends. Oh, depends on the person. And the question about the birth month, yes, I'm November 25th is my birthday. Hope that helps. Okay, so we've got Kush Blunt. Thoughts on the effects of different herbs and psychedelics have on vision. Also, when looking at the outside world, feeling like there's no separation because of creating hallucinations of it in our minds. Yeah, we see with a different vision on psychedelics. It really is like a third eye. It's not literally a third eye, of course, and it's very, very figurative and not anything you really see. The visual effects of psychedelics can be very intense, but they're also something that you see in a metaphoric way. I've been fascinated with how tracers work and how you can look at something and have what they call pareidolia, which is pareidolia is when you see faces in things and you start to, oh yeah. Or sorry, that's apophenia, I think. And pareidolia is when you see more meaning in things than are really there, which happens a lot on psychedelics, so it's important to distinguish between having an oh wow moment or an oh okay, I'm high moment. That's a tricky one. The next one's from DB Music Group. What was your first experience with a mind-altering drug, like pot, alcohol, psychedelics, etc.? The earliest one I can remember is smoking a couple of bowls with someone in my teen years and sitting and watching a movie that had just come out at the time. It was called Nuns on the Run with Whoopi Goldberg, and I was just so stoned. It was just like, I think it was back in the early 90s, maybe 1990 actually, yeah, but I had a lot of psychedelic experiences after that. I'll have to do a video some in the future. Brethren Fudge says, what are your views on forgiveness? That's a good one. I believe that nobody should have to forgive someone right away for what they've done, but everyone should eventually forgive. I've had people steal from me and rob me right under my nose, and I've forgiven them. I've had people wrong me and always forgive them in the end. It might take a year or two or even longer. For one guy it was like 8 years, but it's important to forgive. You take that burden off of yourself, and it's holding in resentment is only painful. Only painful. Aaron asks, I'm sure you've discussed this in the past, but what are your views on astrology? I'll have to do a completely separate video on that, Aaron. And for those of you out there who aren't aware, Aaron Gawk, he has his own channel on YouTube, and he has some really great philosophies. I love watching his stuff. And as for the question, my views on astrology, I find that there are some interesting connections between astrology, the astrological charts, and the actual behaviors of humans. How much of that is manifested by the individual remains to be seen. Here's what I believe. I believe that long ago we had some type of a knowledge about being born at certain times. The sun and the earth are in particular positions at any given time of the year. Okay? This is the same every year. So a person born in November is going to be born in a different, everything from the magnetosphere. I don't know how it all operates, and I can't even pretend to understand it. But the idea that being born in November and someone being born in June could have different personalities due to the times that they came into the world, or maybe it just has to do with the time they were in the womb before they were conceived. What were they exposed to magnetically or from the sun, from the stars? The idea that we are affected by something as simple as the moon, where high crime rates are higher. Could that be just because it's a full moon and it's brighter out? Who knows? But that's when you get into speculation. Astrology is a very difficult one. I've done my charts. I have a big-ass book on it, but I don't believe... My question is the same on astrology. Who came up with it? And I'm still trying to figure that out. Like, what was it, a group of people? Where did it really come from? So I'll have to get into that on another video. Question from William. What's up, William? He says, what do you want to do? Question, what do you want to do? Reflection, it's a hard question. What do I want to do? I'm doing it. I want to do my best. I really don't know. That's one of the hardest things for me, is to find out what I do want to do. But I'm doing it. It just kind of falls into place. Has faith, right? Have faith. Let's see. Tyler, you have a question? Oh, he's asking about my favorite books. That's a really hard one. I did a book video in the past and maybe I could post you a link if you want. Because I could go on about books, but I don't have a favorite book. I really don't. My question is, there a certain strain, this is from Irene, is there a certain strain of kratom that will help both? Oh, I suffer from anxiety and pain. Strains vary. Even if you buy from one vendor, the next batch might be different, even if it's from the same plantation and the same strain, because of weather differences and timing and harvest and drying methods. So you just have to find something that you like. I've found some red strains are energizing and some green strains are sedating. It's very hard to pin it down. You just have to. It's a trial and error thing, which can be difficult. Brethren Fudge again. Brethren Fudge. What were things that spooked you as a kid? What spooks you now? What makes love most important? Love is of most importance because it's the one emotion that when we feel it, it drives us to connect with one another. But I can't define love. Love is really an illusion. It's a feeling we get of, the oxytocin hormones, a connection, but there's a different type of love, like the platonic love of one another, but it has to be developed. And why I think it's important is because you have to develop it. So it puts a responsibility in your hands to do so. As far as what spooks me, nothing really spooks me. I can't think of anything that spooks me except the idea of infinity. It's an interesting thought. He asked a couple more down here. Where has following your heart brought you? It's brought me a wonderful family, and wonderful family. But your heart can also lead you astray, so you have to learn to control how much you listen to your heart. I know that may seem counterintuitive, but how do you feel towards the awareness of being one? I find that it comes and goes. Can't have it all the time, or it's just overwhelming, but it's important to feel it. And if you haven't felt it, then you can't explain it to anyone, so that's the hard one. Favorite quotes? Not really. Favorite memorable advice that was shared with you growing up? I really don't have any on that, except when I was told by some old-timers, don't think too much. And I thought, that's ridiculous. I realized first you have to think a lot, and then you have to stop thinking too much, or you'll drive yourself insane. Grim Reefer says, you mentioned white willow bark for pain relief. What's your experience? Is it worth trying? Really, it's just the salicylic acid that they extract from willow bark, or a synthetic version of that that's used for aspirin. I really haven't used it much, so I really wouldn't know. I still have some, but I haven't really taken it. Any experience with Amanita muscaria? No, I haven't taken any deliriants. I'm not really willing to take that risk on that one. The muscarine is supposed to be an interesting experience, but have you had any endogenous DMT experiences? For those who don't know what endogenous means, it means it's produced by the body itself rather than taking DMT. And since DMT is produced in the brain, he's asking whether or not I've had any experiences out of the blue. I'm not sure, because life is psychedelic and it's really hard to know. I don't know what I would compare it to, but nothing like the DMT experience that I've had smoking it. Jay asks, is it worth having an online business? Is it constant marketing? That's very subjective. Is it worth having one? It depends on how hard you want to work and what you want to do. Is it constant marketing? If you want to be successful, I've never marketed my company, so I've always had a small customer base. I'm not very good with, flashy ads and coupons and go get this, come get this now. Oh, this is the best deal, best stuff you've ever had. Because I try to be honest with like the product itself. Like, there's no miracle. You just find something that works for you, But like I said, it depends on what you're selling. So online businesses can be stressful. I would rather interact with customers face to face, but that's very hard to do in today's world, unless you have a storefront. And spending all that extra money, it's just overhead is just a drag. Flower Tower asks, have you ever heard about MGTOW, men going their own way phenomena? And if yes, how much do you think it has in common with the beautiful ones from the Mouse Utopia experiment? This is fascinating because actually I had to go back and re-look at the Mouse Utopia experiment and the beautiful ones, and I would like to do a separate video on this. But basically they put some mice in an environment where they were free to do whatever they want, endless food, just hang out and eat. They multiplied like crazy, the population reached a peak and then quickly declined and they all died off. They started fighting, mamas would eat their babies and fight with one another, and then there were a few of them that withdrew to a random corner, and they all hung out together in these groups, and some of them even had like males guarding the area, from what I understood. And these were just the chill, docile, kickback, ones that had, and they completely stopped interacting with the rest, but they also basically lost their instinct, their intuition, and their will to live. They were basically just husks waiting to die, if you will, with no real purpose. And the comparison was, what's happening with human society right now? Are we hitting the same peak where, we're going to be constantly fighting and people are going to withdraw into their own groups? I find there's a lot of difference, of course, because we're not confined in the same way, but as far as the men going their own way movement, I have mixed feelings on that. I find it, the ones I've talked to, people who are involved in it, I find it kind of ridiculous, like the men's rights movement. Yes, men need rights too, and yes, that there are some issues where women are favored over men because of this or that, just like there's issues where men are favored over women. There's always been not sexism, but bias, if you will, and there are issues. But as far as joining a group, if you have to tell people you're going your own way, the way I feel about most of the people I've met is that they're men who have been harmed by a woman in their life, feel cheated by women, and so they basically spend their time hating women. Instead of going their own way, they sit and talk about it. It's like the guy that's like, I'm going my own way, I'm going my own way. Well, just do it then, It doesn't, shouldn't, if you need a support group for that, then, there's a reason why men and women, interact the way we do. It's hard to be a human, plenty of men have been screwed over by women and vice versa. And so as far as the movement itself, I guess, to each his own is the only thing I can really say about that. Have you ever given up Kratom? This one's from Dermot. Have you ever given up Kratom? For how long, and what were the side effects? I haven't quit very long. Usually you'll get a stuffy nose. You might feel tired, restless legs, maybe can't sleep very well for a few days. Generally they pass within a week. I've been taking it for years, and basically every time I think to quit, I think the only reason why I want to quit is because I keep hearing people say it's hard to quit, and I don't want to have another addiction. But then I ask myself, what are the negative side effects of kratom that are happening to me right now that would make me want to quit? And I don't have any. It's a phenomenal plant. Just like I smoked cannabis for 25 years, I never thought, well, why should I quit for a period and thought, okay, I enjoy smoking, and that's just how it is. So, no, I haven't quit yet. But it'll come, and when it does, whatever. The next question is by B. DeCampo. To what degree do you think people who use psychedelics are more... Darn it. Don't call me while I'm trying to read my stuff. New Jersey? I don't answer my phone. Vita Campo says, to what degree do you think people who use psychedelics are more mindless rather than mindful? I see many young people that have a naive, cavalier, and frivolous attitude about it. And I have talked about this actually a lot in the past. Yes, there are some kids out there who take psychedelics, go to parties, and get all wasted and take too much. They're the ones that give MDMA and LSD a bad name because they might take too much. Maybe they go out of their mind, whatever, but really you have to try it in that type of atmosphere in order to find out what it brings you. In other words, you can go out and party on psychedelics, but then you might go back towards the end of the trip, you're laying there in bed and you're thinking, wow, I'm having some big insights here. And then you start to see it as a tool. So it's just like a kid would swing a hammer to bash things around until they grow up and learn how to use it properly. And I think that once you learn to use psychedelics as a tool, it's amazing, but they're still fun. And so it's hard to separate those two. Sean says, what are you going to do if the government fully outlaws kratom and other natural herbs? Do you want to join the revolution? I've been in the revolution for 20 years, so this country is going to be taken over by the people that enslave. Okay, here's what I would say about that. I've been, I don't think that the government's ever going to outlaw herbs. They might make their effects on kratom known, like they have, but we're obviously fighting it because they haven't closed it down yet. I'm not really worried about it. I know that everything finds a way. We'll always find a way, and I really don't think they'll have the power to shut down just herbs in general. But we have to fight each one as it comes up, every issue. Any herb that has a potential to be banned, it shouldn't be. The next one is Phenibut. Is it worth it? This is from Petey. I've never done Phenibut. I'm not interested in Phenibut. I have no idea. I won't touch it because I've heard about the addictive potential and the withdrawals. So it's off my list of things that I'm going to do. Do you meditate? This is from Schnapps. Do you meditate on a daily basis? No, I do not. I can't even pretend to. I haven't meditated in a couple of years, honestly. There are times when I sit with my eyes closed. I've realized meditation for me isn't about a particular pose or way of sitting, but rather clearing your mind and letting things flow. So work can be meditation in some ways. Zig Zaggerman asked, Carpos, do you think the government will admit UFOs are real? And I was a UFO fanatic for a long time, so I've learned everything I could learn about UFOs. Then I learned about all the fake stories that were put out to, make it seem like we had UFOs that we didn't, and now I just separated the two and say, I don't know. When I see the evidence myself, I don't even know if I'll believe it then, because it's hard to determine these days. Who knows how many UFOs in the skies may be made by our own government? We know they were working on them in World War II in Germany, so I think that the government's already admitted UFOs are real. It's just a matter of where you're looking, right? And even if they came out right on a news press and said that, nobody would believe it. Your thoughts on millennials and generation compared to Gen X? The comparisons are just technological, really. I can't compare two generations other than the fact that the kids today don't have the ability to use use a compass, and I know that everybody sees people always looking down at their phone all day, and that's just the way it is now. And times are changing. We're using these new tools. We're excited, and everything at our fingertips. So the big difference is maybe not being able to. Yeah, I don't know. That's a really hard one. Next one, I want to start a handcrafted jewelry herb and make wooden boxes. Any tips from starting from scratch?